We believe he's here in the studio with us here, so welcome to the stream. Soham, good to meet you. How are you doing?
There he is.
Welcome
the
to
man
the
himself.
show. Thanks so much for joining. Why don't you introduce yourself and just take a few minutes to just give us what's going on in your world, what's the last 24 hours been like? How would you describe yourself? What do you have to say to people? And then I'm sure
Let's go back to the very beginning. Who are you? Where do you come from?
I mean, I'm originally from Mumbai. I kind of grew up, here all my life. Obviously, drove into computer science, coding and everything, kind of without a choice, kind of process of elimination. Fell in love with it. As you're aware, at this point, I'm like everyone's favorite founding engineer, pretty much, or worker 17, or whatever you might call it, like AI bot or Soham as a service. I don't know. But yeah, don't have much to my story essentially. I've just been always passionate about building.
What was
things
your first job?
My first job was actually at a company called Alan. It was like a voice assisted conversational startup.
Okay.
This is back in 2020, 2021.
2020. And when did you come to the States? Because I know I was talking to Matt and he said you would go to the anti-metal offsites and you're very much a part of the team.
So to be honest, I have family in the East Coast. The first time I ever visited US was in 2018, and then I was supposed to do grad school there. Different financial circumstances, couldn't do that. Had to kind of not go with that plan. But obviously, I have visited America mostly for offsites and stuff, just to catch up with team members and things like that.
Okay, so the main claim that was levied against you on X yesterday kind of started with Suhail over at Playground. He accused you of working at multiple jobs simultaneously. Is that true?
It is true.
Okay.
And yeah, I would love to add color to it, but
Please.
that is true.
Yeah, I guess the question is, do you believe that you were in violation of your own employment contracts, or do you believe that there was some sort of legal loophole that allowed you to do this without committing any sort of legal violation?
I mean, honestly, I think going back to how it even started to happen and what the motivations were,
Yeah, please.
would probably have, obviously I would want to preface with saying I'm not proud of what I've done. That's not something that I endorse either. But financial circumstances essentially, no one really likes to work 140 hours a week, right? But I had to do this kind of out of necessity. I was in extremely dire financial circumstances, and somehow I'm not a very people person. I don't share much in terms of what's going on with my life, and
Sure.
kind of with my internal thought process, was kind of getting more stressed with hey, I want to come out of the situation. What should I do? So it was not more so kind of out of greed, but essentially necessity, and just thought that if I work multiple places, I can basically help myself alleviate the situation I was in much faster.
No, it's very economically rational. What about the conjecture that you had a team of junior developers underneath you helping you actually accomplish the tasks? Is there any truth to that?
I wish I had the money, and I wish that was true, but that is not true.
Really?
Any of the founders that I worked with can vouch with that. I have multiple locations pair programmed with people.
Yeah.
I've written every single inch of the code. Antimetal is one of the companies I worked at.
Yeah.
They have pretty high bar for design, as you might know. They did a launch recently. There were two occasions where just before the launch, the contractor who was going to do the front end for us essentially had bailed out, and we as a team had to figure out and do everything, which was a team of only 3 engineers, right?
So how did it originally happen though? You started with one job in 2020, then you realized, hey, I could add another, and then you realized you could just continuously add them. Did you create any type of financial models to kind of model out potential churn as you would get, I'm curious if you were operating this looking at it as basically a SaaS business, the SaaS of Soham.
This was not a business to me. Every company that I've worked with, I have deeply cared about. And again, people who spend a lot of time with me can back that on multiple occasions. And again, I did not have any financial model. Like I said, the only motivation for me was, hey, I'm in a financial jeopardy.
Mhm.
And so I didn't do this until 2022. 2022 is actually when I was, running into issues. I had deferred my, grad school
Sure.
admit, and, did like an online degree, but basically, did not have like enough, uh, like, uh, essentially like, just to get out of the situation I was in.
Sure.
Don't want to talk like too much deeply about it, but
No, no, that's fine.
so yeah, so that's
Talk
kind of
about
why.
your own abilities. It seemed universal that the teams that you worked on said that you were extremely talented, that you interviewed incredibly well. It's easy for new CS grads to be frustrated because you were probably running laps around them in the interview process. But yeah, it's very impressive if you actually didn't have a junior team and you were just juggling. It seems. Estimates seem to put it at maybe five companies at once.
Yeah, are
maybe
you just
beyond
like
that.
hyper productive? Are you leveraging AI tools and coding assistants? Are you just able to move really quickly in a startup environment, or are you also like talented at like systems engineering and algorithms and like solving really really hard computational problems?
So I'll preface with this. Some of these companies I worked at was before the Copilot boom, right?
Mm.
There were no AI-assisted programming. At least three startups have went on the record like saying this. People who've pair programmed with we can also vouch with this. But the real truth is, there's this funny line in some of my intro emails like TLDR, I don't do anything outside coding. That is very true. And if you're like spending hours, like sitting in front of the computer, you will eventually like, at least I hope so, like get good at it. Um, there's obviously a lot for me to learn in general. I wouldn't say like I'm, like a, I don't know what they call like, like a platform engineer, something like,
Sure.
top principal or whatever. But I would like to believe that I was a decent enough, good enough engineer to essentially be able to work at three places because that's the only thing I did the entire day.
So
For the
an average day for you, an average week for you, it feels like basically maybe you sleep for 6 to 8 hours and then you're basically programming
I am
for 12 to
notorious.
14 hours every single day for 7 days a week.
But as some of these new coding code gen tools came out, Claude Code, Cursor, Devon, etc., did you feel like you could add maybe a few more jobs? Were you getting more efficient, or do you still handcrafted code, farm to table, organic, handmade?
I mean, obviously like having more like AI assisted tooling like definitely helped, but it did not amount to like me working on more jobs.
Mm.
Because like I would still love to spend a justifiable hour like working on something, and it doesn't have like a measure. It's not like, hey, I'm going to split time like 4 hours for this company, 4 hours for that company. Like I was essentially like working until I got something done for that day. And I think people around me will probably say this, that I am notoriously known for not sleeping.
Mm.
I am, I'm a serial like non-sleeper at this
Mm.
point, is what I would say. Um,
Insomniac.
but yeah, and as far as the interviews go, right? Like, so there's also been a lot of things around like, hey, I probably used, some sort of like tool like Cluely, which I would love for the founder to essentially go on record and say if I'm a paying customer, I'm not.
Mm.
But or some sort of like hack to game the system. The truth is, a lot of these companies did not have lead code style problems, and if they did, I would have bombed interviews.
Mm.
Because I don't practice lead code as much. I know my data structures well. I know what to use when, but like typically a gun
Well,
to
you're
my head,
also great
like
at cold email. I saw some of these cold emails. You got a great format. It pulls people in. It shows your personality. It shows that you care about coding, and I think that helps
I
a
mean,
lot as well.
Totally.
yeah, I mean, I do care about coding a lot, but again, like most of these companies essentially had a take-home assessment or a
Yeah.
work trial, right? So it's very difficult to like game a work trial or game a take-home assessment. Like you have to do it and then deliver it. And I did everything on my own. Like I was also doing the work trials on my own, and
Yeah.
yeah, like I guess I'll leave it at that. If they did have lead code, I would have bombed the interviews, but luckily they didn't. Like startups usually just like care more about like
What
working
you
with
can
Talk
you.
do.
And
talk a little bit about the companies that you chose to work for, you applied to. Do you think you could have pulled this off with Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and split 3 times? Or do they have defenses in place that would make this difficult? There's a variety of memes around maybe big tech companies. It's easier work, maybe startups are harder. I'm just kind of curious about, it seems like you went for a lot of startups. What was the reasoning behind that?
yeah, so it feels counterintuitive. Like if I was in dire need of money, like why would I work for, startups as opposed to big tech? Because they clearly pay well. They have a 9 to 5 schedule. For the most part, like I would say, people don't really care about like what you are essentially like doing. Um, the thing with me is like if you're spending, multiple hours a week like working on something, you would have to at least decently be passionate about it, because otherwise you'll just like burn out. Like I said, each of these companies that I work for, and again, founders, some of the founders who spend meaningful time with me can vouch. Um, you know would say that I actually cared about these companies. So it wasn't like cold email without context. Like I deeply read into what a company was doing, what the business model was, who their customers were. I had great ideas about like, what to build for them, what not to build for them, what the platform is like. I did deliver like beyond engineering for a lot of these companies. And yeah, like it was more kind of like, hey, if I'm spending like 140 hours, like I want to do something that I actually care about. Like I don't want to like, do 9 to 5 and kind of like center a div in like 6 hours or something.
Yeah.
That's just not me, because I do like what I do, and
Yeah.
and that's kind of
Cold email
part of it.
hack. Send the cold emails from the heart. Put
Yeah,
some
that's a
real
good point.
thought into them.
Talk to me about other alternatives that you maybe considered or maybe didn't. Did you ever think about going to a startup and saying like, hey, I'm doing a great job. I'm working 40 hours a week. I need to make more money. I'd like to take on a second job. Would that be amenable to you? Do you think that founders might be actually open to that?
Or say I'm working 18 hours a day. Can you pay
me 3 times as much?
Can you pay me?
I'm
Yeah.
doing the work of 3 devs, because there is a world where you could have allocated all that time and one startup would have gotten 3 times as much value, but they probably should have paid you 3 times as much, maybe, to make that balance out. And so did you ever have those types of decisions? Like we're seeing this with the AI talent wars, the 10x, you can think of yourself as like a 3 to 5x engineer, I guess. No offense, but the 100x engineers are getting 100 million.
You could maybe be 10x if you really focus.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so it's almost a question of like, why couldn't you get the money that you wanted from a single job? What was the stumbling block there?
Yeah, I think the part where I should have basically done is like come clean with my situation. To be very frank with you, like I mentioned, like I'm not a good person with sharing what my internal conflicts are. I do like to keep boundaries between my personal and private, like whatever's like going with me mentally. And that's true with any person I'm with as well, like that's outside of work. So one, there was an embarrassment to essentially like admitting that, hey, I have this struggles mentally, and talk in open about it. And then the second thing is, I really did not like think through this, because like I said, it was an action that was done more out of like desperation to get out of the situation I was in, rather than like,
I mean, the flip side here is that you don't necessarily need to have something going on in your family to justify a $10 million salary or a $1 million salary. Like LeBron James doesn't need to say, oh, like, I have a sob story and that's why I need $50 million contract. He's like, I'm delivering this value to you and you should pay me the value that I'm creating. And so I'm wondering if you ever considered just coming to a founder and saying like, I can do the job of 3 engineers, but you got to pay me 3 times as much.
Honestly, it again feels counterintuitive. Like I don't really care much about the money. I was really into it for building. So like greed was not like an incentive for me. Again, regardless of my financial circumstances, in most of these companies, I always took the lower, pay higher equity offer. Again, like equity for me was not even like vested until I would make the move to US, which, like I said, I was based out of India. So I had to go through a whole visa process in order to make that happen. So I wouldn't even be getting equity as long as my immigration was uncertain, which it was.
Yeah.
So one of the decisions seem counterintuitive. Basically, for me, is like, hey, I have to do something to kind of get out of the situation I'm in. I also want to spend time like building something meaningful. As long as I like the startup and as long as it's not like hand to mouth, it did not matter too much. Like,
So what are you going to do now? You have the intention of the entire tech ecosystem. And I appreciate how candid you've been with us. And
I want to talk about dev shop specifically.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few angles here. You could do the dev shop of Soham Parekh. I think you would be able to get a handful of clients immediately. I think you could sign a max out contract with Cluely. They would probably pay you a pretty penny to join the team over there. And I also, it sounds like you're interested in joining as a founding engineer of a new AI startup. So how are you thinking about your opportunities right now, and how can you turn this into a win?
Yeah, look, like I've, regardless of the situation, like I've been privileged to like work for some of these companies, like, Antimetal, Shares and Matt, the founders, like Sync Labs, Prady, Rutherba. They're one of the most, crack places I've been at in general, partly because they had me, maybe not, I don't know, I guess stand with that. But I think the main thing is like, I am really excited about what I'm going to be a part of next. So, working with a company called Darwin, they are essentially like building a new like AI driven like data platform, like video platform essentially for more kind of like UGC style media, and we're going to release to the market very shortly. This is the only thing I'm going to focus on. I think they've put a bet on me. I have a lot to prove, and there's a lot for me to say. So yeah.
How do you rebuild trust? How do you give them the confidence that this isn't just you're focused on it for a couple weeks and then the second job creeps in and then the third job creeps in? Is there something that you see happening down the line around worker monitoring or checking when the GitHub commits are coming in, or doing something to understand if someone else is working multiple places? Somebody was saying tech needs some sort of service to see, hey, are we employing the same company? How do you rebuild trust and guarantee that you won't be working multiple jobs against the will of the current employer?
So I think all of this that has taught me is just coming to kind of like probably makes people understand your situation. After all, like we all are humans. I don't anticipate like working on multiple gigs again, but my financial circumstances have not changed. So even if it did came to them, which it won't, like right now I'm very clear that this is my sole focus. I would probably like approach with like being very candid with the founders and just letting them know. And if that's not a possibility, that's fine. Maybe I can figure a way out where there's like a higher pay or whatever, kind of like to your point, right? But in another spectrum of the world, I think like what I've really realized is that I just want to be a part of like building something that I can like focus on a longer term, and that's always been the goal. It is always the goal with any of these companies I worked with. So I obviously like I believe in actions more than words. Like I guess what we'll build and launch in a month would probably be a testament to what we've been able to build.
Well, you're certainly going to have a lot of attention around that launch. I hope you, now is probably not the right time to renegotiate your offer letter for the new company. You should probably, stick with it. But I think you're going to bring a lot of marketing value to Darwin, the new company you're joining. What's the reaction been like at home? You getting a lot of messages from
Has this
friends?
broken tech X and broken containment into kind of your the world beyond just people asking you about this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, reaction is natural. Like a ton of people have been asking about this. What's also funny is like, some of the memes. Like, I am very new to Twitter. I joined Twitter yesterday, so this was a lesson for me in social media in general. Like, I am not a social media person, so it just like I was like very overwhelmed with it in general. Obviously, feeling shitty about it as well. Like I said, I'm not very proud of what I did. I think there was a way where I could have course corrected in a much different manner. So there was a lot of like reflection in general, but I think friends and family have been strong. Like I said, I was lucky to work at some of these places where I had really close relationships with the founders. A lot of them reached out, they to essentially be like helpful here, kind of give advice on what I should be doing next. Even like, sometimes like staying through with me, like, just to make sure that I'm like all right.
No, I think it says a lot that a number of the people that you work for that fired you because you were working multiple jobs still care about you. It shows that when you were working for them, at least it does seem like you really did care.
Are there any startups that you've worked for in the past that you were working multiple jobs for that you haven't gotten a chance to apologize to yet that you plan to?
I mean, in general, like I plan to apologize to everyone. Like that goes without saying.
Any companies that you still need to resign from?
None whatsoever. Darwin is the only focus I have.
That's great. Okay. He's on the record.
You're on the right path.
On the right path.
You're
Well,
on
I'm
the right
rooting for
path.
you. I hope this is a story of redemption. I believe in forgiveness. I believe
So,
in mistakes, and I'm optimistic that this can have a good ending.
Me too. So to be clear, your X account is at real Soham Parekh, right?
Yeah.
That's the real one?
That's the real one,
Okay,
'cause
because
there's
there's
a
a lot
couple
of fake
fake
ones
ones out
floating
there.
out there
You
trying
wanna
to ride the hype wave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. There's been so many fake accounts, and a lot of fake narratives as well. But yeah, that is my real account. There's one person who asked me to post a picture of banana on my head with a fork in my hand,
Mm-hmm.
and I did not have banana at my home at that point in time. But I was trying to do that just to show that
Proof
hey,
of
this is me.
Parekh.
Okay.
But it's been interestingly like while to like notice how people are like taking this in different ways. But yeah, that kind of helps like just feel a little bit less shitty about it. But yeah.
Yeah. What are the questions here? Remote versus in office, U.S. versus international, AI.
Yeah, I mean, I
cheating,
think we had this
10x
post from
engineers.
Ahmad at Mercury. I think the reason this struck such a chord is, again, it's this remote angle, the international angle, the ideas around a 10x engineer, the potential of new AI tools. But this has been really helpful to get to know you. And I think you provided entertainment for a lot of people the last 24 hours. So I'm glad to hear that you're going to apologize to everybody that you misled. And I am excited to follow what you do next.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers.
We'll talk to you soon.
We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Polymarket, the world's largest prediction market. Go to polymarket.com.